then make sure you sign in for today, for October 16th. So we'll keep using this sign in. You can just initial. We'll go ahead and initial that, and then put your book number down for today. And then you'll pick up one of these sheets that has two sides. The first side will talk about who each of our 4 speakers are. And then the back side will talk about the small group reflection at the end of this series. So for the 8 credits in this series, you'll go to these 4 talks, and then you will read this book. It's an easy read. It looks big. It's not. It's a light lift. And it outlines for you what chapters you expect each week. So for this week, it'll be chapters 1, 2, and 3. Like I say, it's not a real tough reading assignment, but it should give you some good insights into the things that our speakers are talking about. And so with that, if you guys can come on up, and then we'll have our first speaker.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
It's good. It's full group.
Yeah. So hopefully I have something that is good.
So the fellows in the back are faculty who are visiting from India.
Okay.
They're starting EPICS program at their school.
Very nice.
So they're here to just kind of. So we just got back from a tour of Walt. Have you been there?
I have not been there yet. I've been right
Prepare
outside.
to be blown away.
Really?
It is unbelievable.
I hear rave reviews from everyone.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, every detail, the architecture, the incredible spaces that are designed for like this generation of students. And it's packed.
Yeah.
Every available space is packed. I don't know where they came from. I'm surprised there are still some students in Armstrong.
Now I got to go over there and actually, plan some events.
I haven't seen the BIDC either.
I haven't seen BIDC. Do they have the open house?
They did a homecoming, I think. Well, they dedication.
Oh, Bechtel was here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, I want to see. They want to see the BIDC, so we'll probably see it tomorrow.
Okay. Very nice.
Totally look at Walt.
And I constantly go past the building, but never get an opportunity to,
So
go
it's the
into
same
it.
architecture who did Martin Jiske.
Ah, okay.
So in the Drug Discovery Building, and so lots of natural light, very aesthetically very nice, but then also the design that went into it, pretty incredible.
Well, that's good to hear, particularly for the length of time it took.
And the disruption, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it does feel like it feels much better just around the space, having.
Yeah, you can breathe.
You can actually walk around, and so Enad, when it was there before, it felt out of place, particularly with everything else that was there.
Yep. It was a weird building in any time. It was a weird building 20 years ago.
Right.
It was strange inside. It was just not good.
It was really depressing inside.
It was really depressing. Yeah, that's where EPICS was. Oh no, that's for engineering education, first year engineering.
Mm-hmm.
It's encouraging to see how many students are interested in developing their leadership skills.
That is very encouraging, and that's good that I'm going to ask them a question. We'll see how they respond at the very beginning. A few questions to see what their viewpoints of themselves are. So.
This series, it's 4, is sponsored by General Motors.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
I will mention this to Richard.
Who's that?
Richard Smith. He's one of the GM reps that comes on a regular basis, and so I'll mention. One, they're our biggest sponsor by far,
Really?
over anyone
ours too,
else.
Actually. Yeah.
So we can talk about the collaboration.
Nice. So Bill Mazzillo is our main contact. I'm not sure if you've met him. And so he'll be here he's, I think, the main Purdue person. So he'll be here on our 3rd presentation. He talks about giving constructive criticism and
That's very good. Well, it's good to know how to give it and also how to take it.
yeah, I know. It's hard.
Yeah.
A lot of these students have returned to EPICS, which we'd love to see.
Yeah, that's good. The vertical integration is working then.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have more compelling projects. So, and in the assistive device, assistive technology space, Andrew's done a lot
Okay.
to grow the opportunities, and those really resonate.
Yeah, that's a very natural connection. You can see the impact that you're having, so that really helps.
Yeah. So I think we have more BMEs probably than we ever had.
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, I've been all over the place. Is the message going well for you?
This semester a brutal but surviving.
Okay.
Just enjoying 3ME classes with labs.
Nice full room.
Yeah, that'll do it. But you will come out of it intact.
Hopefully.
This is quite the crowd. Oh, not a problem at all. Glad to do it.
Appreciate it very much.
Yes.
We got a good sized group together.
Oh, yeah.
Good size.
This is impressive.
Yeah, it was easier this year. Last year, I had to no, really, please sign up for the leadership thing 10 times. Just threw it out there. I think we had a good session last semester, and I think we got some word of mouth out this time.
That's what that helps. Grapevine's always good. More
Yeah.
powerful often than email.
Well,
Surprisingly.
they don't read emails. So.
It's really hard. I don't know how to communicate with people anymore. It's just you don't open emails. You're what are they don't follow any of our social media stuff. It's just do I need to send each of you an individual text message? Go
For
to your
some.
house, knock on the door. Well, I'll stay out of the way. Let Maeve give you a quick introduction, and
All right.
we'll be on our
Pop
way.
your board. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the first session of the GM Leadership Series. It's going to be a great series, and we're starting off with a fabulous speaker. So I'd like to introduce Darryl Dickerson. He's the Associate Director of the Minority Engineering Program. You may know him already. He is a Purdue grad, master's and PhD biomedical engineering, and he has been very active in the National Society of Black Engineers. And so he was actually past president of that organization. And he's also a serial entrepreneur. So let him go ahead and take it away, but give him your good attention.
All right. Thank you, Maeve. And good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, I know it's Monday afternoon, but I need some in here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you guys today. So this is kind of interesting because I'm the first, and so I don't know really how to set the stage. But I'm hoping that with your interaction, we can make this a very good session, and you can learn a little bit about me, a little bit about my experience, and some things that you can do to look forward to being successful in your future. And so I want to start with just introducing myself a little bit more, giving you a little bit more background about who I am, so that you know who this guy up here speaking to you is. And so I am originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, so that picture that you see on the right of the screen is a streetcar, the St. Charles streetcar going down St. Charles in beautiful uptown New Orleans. I am the second of 4 children, so I am sort of a middle child, and I have some traits associated with that. Career aspirations as a child, I wanted to be a doctor, a dentist, and a writer. And my aunt remembers me telling her this many times very, very well. So I sort of achieved half of a third of the goal there. I'm a classical musician, a tennis player, an avid gym enthusiast, and all of those things are kind of actually run through sort of the leadership themes and traits that I'll talk about. And generally, I am a reserved introvert, so it is actually weird for me to see myself up here speaking to a class of anyone. Just generally, and I think that's important for you to know as we go through this conversation about what leadership is and leadership skills and traits and what's important. My educational background from New Orleans, went through New Orleans Public Schools all the way through. My bachelor's is in biomedical engineering from Tulane University, and at that time they required us to do a senior thesis, and my senior thesis was on looking at cytokines and their diffusion through different matrices. My PhD is from here at Purdue, also in biomedical engineering. I was an NSF fellow and a Whitaker fellow, focused on looking at different sorts of biomaterials and their utilization for regeneration of tissues, and that leads into some of the entrepreneurial work that I've done. After I got my PhD, I went on to do a postdoc looking specifically at entrepreneurship, and that led to the founding of my company, which is called Bioregeneration Technologies, in which I am the founder and chief executive, and started at the Minority Engineering Program about 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, I think 2 weeks from now, 5 years ago. Started out as the Outreach and Development Administrator and then the Associate Director from 2013 to the present. And so my nonprofit experience actually kind of parallels this experience, and it started out with National Society of Black Engineers. And I list the national experience there on the board. So National Society of Black Engineers was actually founded here at Purdue back in 1975. My experience actually goes back to my undergrad days at Tulane University, where I first was recruited to the organization to be a member, then did some chapter leadership things, eventually became chapter president, was then recruited to be a regional executive officer, and so there's 6 geographic regions associated with Nesby. I was in Region 5 at the time, served as a pre-college initiative chair, and then became the National Pre-College Initiative Chair, in which I sat on the board of directors of the organization. And so Nesby is interesting in that it's a student-run organization. So students are the directors. Students actually give direction to a staff to be able to implement and do programs all around the country and all around the world. And eventually became the chairman of the board and the chief executive in 2007 and 2008. And as I go through some of the leadership traits and skills, I'm going to talk about some of the Nesby experience and how that's been powerful in driving what I think are important skills for leadership. Back in 2012, helped to found and still run Adaptive Technologies, where the focus is taking assistive technologies and really making sure that those that don't have a large market still have a way to get out to a broader audience. And recently I've become involved in the National Association of Multicultural Engineering Program Advocates, or NAMEPA, and the focus there, I'm part of the MEP team here. There are MEP directors all around the country, and it's a national network of MEPs. And I've served as treasurer for the past 2 years and now president-elect of that organization. So if you look at that litany of things, there are obviously some leadership experiences associated with them all. And you know, I characterize myself as a generally reserved introvert. And so that seems kind of counter to the idea of being a leader. But that characteristic does not necessarily mean that you can't be a leader and be a successful leader, and we'll talk about exactly how one can do that. But first, I have a question for you. I want you to name 5 great leaders. Sit down, everyone has pen and paper or computer. So name 5 great leaders that come to mind. Don't think too hard about it. It's whatever comes to the top of your head in the next 15 seconds. Okay, and so now in the next 30 seconds, list out what makes them great. What makes those leaders great in your mind? Okay, now I'm going to get some audience participation. So can someone give me one of the leaders they listed out and tell me why they're a great leader? If I don't see a hand, I will start calling on folks. There we go.
So I put down President Obama, given that he has an ability of being moving, charismatic, goal-oriented, and driven.
All right, very nice.
General Eisenhower.
General Eisenhower, why?
Well, so I would say number one, because he never asked any of his soldiers or subordinates to do something that he wouldn't be willing to do himself.
Very nice, keep that in mind. Never ask someone else to do something that he would not willing to do himself. Who else? Yes? Martin Luther King, very determined. We're actually going to come on that particular skill set. Can I get two others? Two other volunteers. Yes?
Joe Madden, manager the Cubs, because he knows how to get his team to succeed.
All right, so there's an inspirational aspect of being a leader. Very nice. Yes? Yeah, so when you think of Gandhi, there isn't the classic sort of ideal of what a leader is, or when you say leader, what comes to mind as a leader, but clearly able to drive people in a particular direction, and so that is leadership. I think those are all very good, and all very good examples of kind of what we traditionally think of as leadership in many ways. You know, the charismatic person out front doing things, but also some of the other qualities and skills that are associated with leadership that I think are very important, and I think that people can work to develop to become good leaders. And so another question, and this is just raise your hand, yes or no, are you a leader? In this room, are you a leader? Raise your hand if you are a leader. So this is very interesting, and the next question is for those who raise their hand, why? Why would you say you're a leader? Yes. You can be influencing and persuasive. Okay. That's good. That's important. Those are good. Those are important skills. Yes.
Now that I'm a senior, I've been able to take the stuff that I've learned and kind of translate that down to younger students here.
All right, so you have some experience that you've been able to translate to others and are able to bring them along the way to train them to take your place, hopefully. One more? Yes. Willing to take initiative and responsibility for a group of people. I want you to keep that responsibility word in mind. I think that one's very, very important. So what's interesting is that we're in a class on leadership, and there was hesitation in the room when I asked that question as to, are you a leader? So the first thing we're going to do is to focus or change our mindset here, because everyone in this room is a leader. Everyone in this room is a leader. So I'm going to ask the question again, are you a leader? Raise your hand. And I still have hesitation there. Okay. So I'm actually going to demand it. Are you a leader? Raise your hand. If you're sitting in this room right now, you are a leader. If you are a student on this campus that is a part of this community and active in this community, then you are a leader. And there's something within you right now, for those who are hesitating, that's holding you back from believing that that's the case. And I'm hoping that through sharing some of my experiences, sharing what I think are important skills and traits of being leaders, that I can help to change your mind to understand that leadership isn't just standing out, being up front and charismatic. It's a lot more about influencing what's around you and being effective in influencing and making change. That is what I call leadership. And so some of the traits that we're going to talk about, the first one is vision. I think it's extraordinarily important for a leader to have vision, and that's understanding what the current state of affairs is and being able to dream up and articulate a change in that state. And so, in my experience, I think the primary examples actually come from my Nesby experience and from my experience with my company. So in my Nesby experience, I told you I started out as the pre-college initiative chair for Nesby at the regional level, then at the national level. And what we did an assessment at that time to understand exactly, what were the critical issues holding back black students from being able to be successful in going into engineering careers. How could we better enable students to be able to be prepared and be successful? And what we did is we looked at data to understand that, one, there's a math proficiency problem, particularly at the elementary school range, where students at the 4th grade level, for African American students particularly, they're about 19% proficient at mathematics. And so if you look at that more broadly, you all know, being mostly engineering students in this room, in order to be successful within engineering, you don't necessarily need to like math, but you do need to be proficient to advanced at it. So that was a critical issue. And then you look a little bit further and understand the psychology behind it, and a lot of it's based in the fact that students weren't receiving the sort of encouragement necessary to be successful. So if you think back to when you were 8 years old, if an adult in the room told you that you were good at something or praised you for something, then in your mindset at that point in time, you're just good at it. Or if they told you you were not good at it or should not do something, your mindset could flip very quickly to say, oh, I just shouldn't do that, because there's an authority figure telling you whether or not you can be successful. And so looking at that data and understanding that there was a real issue at the time, we decided that we needed to look at our pre-college programming to deal with that specific issue. Our pre-college programming at the time ranged from 6th grade up to 12th grade. Now, 12th grade is very different from 3rd and 4th grade, and there's a long lag between there. If you look at the data, you also see that students can be recovered at the 6th through 8th grade range, 8th grade at the latest, but recovery is a very challenging prospect. So instead of looking at recovery, we looked at ways in which we can engage students in a very different way. And so that was the stimulus for founding of what we call the Summer Engineering Experience for Kids, or SEEK. So SEEK was founded back when I was the National Pre-College Initiative Chair, launched when I was the national chair of the organization, and it's been going for 10 years and is now the largest STEM summer experience for elementary school students that we see in the country. And so that is vision, understanding that there was an issue, creating or looking to create a different status, and then creating programming or creating a structure so that you can reach that status, understanding what the vision is. And so within my company, it's a little bit different. Within my company, we look specifically at joint injuries. And so if you look at any joints, mainly knee joints and arthritis occurs in about 21 million people, or is diagnosed in about 21 million people every year. And the main cause of that is cartilage damage. And looking at cartilage damage, the way it progresses is going from initial damage to pain to more pain and the eventual need for a partial or total joint replacement. Our vision is to change that sort of diagnosis pathway so that one does not need a total joint replacement, which is metal and plastic, but can receive a repair from a material that then regenerates the joint surface so that you can be taken off the pain pathway and receive a different sort of activity and lease on life. So vision is very, very important because it will drive all of the activities that you do. It helps to create your strategy that you'll execute, and it helps to rally people around a cause. When we started out with Seek, having the conversation about how we wanted to change the current status really brought funders aboard. It brought people within the World Headquarters staff aboard. It brought all of the members aboard to where it was a great rallying cry for people to come around. And it allowed people to see how they could change what the status was. Same thing within the company. So when I talk about what I'm able to do or what I want to do with the company, that brings people who would potentially want to work for me aboard. It brings funding aboard, and it drives our ability to move things forward. And that is a critical part of leadership. So I want you to think in the current role that you hold, and this is, again, a writing exercise. You're going to be a little bit active today. In the current role that you hold, what is your vision for your role? What is the current state? Where do you want it to be? What does it look like a year down the road, 5 years down the road? What is your vision? I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Think about vision. Okay. So the next, I think, good trait or quality of a good leader is being self-aware, understanding what your skills are, what your strengths are, understanding what your weaknesses are, being able to identify them, being able to fully articulate what those things are. And it's important because you need to know where you're strong, you need to know where you need to develop yourself, but you also need to know where you need assistance, where you can lean on the expertise of others, and be very comfortable with the idea of calling upon others to assist you, to delegating responsibility to them in order to achieve the goals that you have. So when I started the company back in 2010, this was after doing a postdoctoral fellowship in which we were focused on entrepreneurship. So that was really about me learning more about business and how business is done. And what I learned through that experience was I am a very good engineer. I have a fantastic sense of technology and how to communicate about that technology. I don't know much about government regulation. I don't know much about patent law, or as much as I would need to in order to be successful. And so I needed to reach out to people who were more experts in those areas to be able to push things forward. And in doing so, a couple of things happened. One, I understood that some of the experiments that had been done at the time and that we were doing needed to be changed in order to bring in the constraint of the regulations, in order to meet the regulatory requirements. In order for us to push something forward to the FDA, we needed to know exactly what the FDA needed, and as far as the types of animal models and the results that would be produced. And certainly I have the ability to go and look at that on my own, but it was much more efficient and effective for me to have someone come aboard and to give me that information, to lend me their expertise so that we can create a new business strategy. The same thing goes for patent law. That was, again, outside of the realm of what I understood at the time. So it was helpful to bring lawyers up